Okay, today we're going to go over some functions and their graphs. They're real simple, and you should commit these to memory because they will help you in the higher levels of math. So our first function is called the linear function. And what the graph looks like, it's just a normal graph. And just any random line, and it's all based on f of x equals mx plus b, where m is a slope, which means the angle of this line, so it could be like this or any direction. X is just where it falls on the x-axis. This is the x and this is the y-axis. Then the b is the y-intercept, where it falls here on the y-axis. So that's our first function. Our second function is called the constant function. And it looks like this. F of x is equal to b. And on the graph, it just looks like a straight line with a slope of 0 because there's no m here. And it only crosses the y-axis because it's constant. So say this is, let's just call it 3 on the y-axis. Every point along here is 3. Alright, our next function is the identity function. And it is f of x is equal to x. So basically this graph looks like this, where when it goes up one x value or y value, it goes over one x value, and so on and so forth. So like it will be 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Same way with the negative values. Negative 1, 1, or negative 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 2. Alright, so next we're going to look at the absolute function and its graph. So here I have x and y value chart, and we're just going to plug in a few of these values so we can create the graph, so you can see it and understand it a little bit easier. So here on your graphing calculator, you go to y equals, and then put absolute value of x. And then I'm just going to hit table, and it will spit out these values for me. So negative 2, the range is 2. The range of negative 1 is 1, 0, 1, and 2. So it's a pretty simple graph. If you know how absolute value works, which is the distance from 0, then you could basically make this graph in your head. And once you commit it to memory, you'll know what it is. So our first point is negative 2. It's called S1 and this 2. This 1 and this 2. And this 1 and this 2 up here. Alright, so first point, x is negative 2. So 1, 2, and up 2. So there's that point. Negative 1, 1 is our next. 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. So our graph should look something like a V. Alright, so our next function is the quadratic function. And we're going to do the same thing here with our x and value chart. So let's clear this out, and the function is x squared. Go to your table and it'll spit out the values for you. So the y value for -2 is 4, -1 is 1, 0, 1, and 4. Now we go over to our graph. We'll make our points real fast. And each little dash will be 1. So -2, 4. So 1, 2, -2, and up 4. Then -1, 1. 0, 0. 1, 1. And 2, 4. 2, 4. So our graph is what we call a parabola. And it should look something like that. So our next function that we're going to look at is the cube function. And again, we're going to plug in our values for x into and get our y. So let me clear out the y, or just change that to the cubed. And we'll look at the table once more. So -2 is -8, -1 is 1, 0, 0, 1 is 1, and 2 is 8. And all you have to do is plug -2 in for x and you get -8. I'm sure you all know how to do that. So I'm going to start with the middle one at the origin. So that's 0, 0 right there. Then -1, -1. So I'll just call these our points right here. So -1, -1, 1, 1. Then I didn't make 8 marks here, so we're just gonna imagine it kinda. But it would be something way up here, and same thing for over here. So our graph will look something like this. And if we bring our calculator back and we hit graph, it looks something like that. Alright, so our next function is a square root function. So once again, we're going to go back to our y values function on the calculator, and we'll type in the square root of x and hit the table. And we see here that, alright, now you see that there's an error for all the negative values. That's because when you plug in a negative to a square root, it's undefined because you can't take the negative of a square root without getting into imaginary numbers, and we're not going to deal with that in this. So this is undefined, undefined. 0 is 0, 1 is 1, and 2 is approximately 1 and 1.4, which is close to 1.5. So again with these, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, we don't have to worry about the negative values because they're all undefined. So here at the origin, 0, 0, we got 1, 1, and when x is 2, y is about 1.4, which is something like this. So this graph would look something like this if you were to plot more points. And to check it on our calculator, we'll just hit graph, and that's what it looks like. Alright, so our next function we're going to look at is called the cube root function. Okay, so with the cube root function, I'm gonna hit math, go down to cube root, put in x, and second table, and it pops up all these values for me once again. So when x is -2, y is negative 1.26, -1 is -1, 0, 0, 1 is 1, and 2 is about 1.25. So let's graph this real fast. And so when x is -2, y is -1 and about a quarter. So we'll say right there that -1, -1 would be about right, would be right there. Then one at the origin, 1, 1. And then when x is 2, y is 1 1/4 about. So it would be something like that. So this graph would look something like this. And to show it, we'll graph it on the calculator. And that's the graph. Alright, our final function that we're going to look at today is called the reciprocal function. So all it is 1 divided by x. We'll hit table. In here, we notice that at 0 there's an error, because when you divide by anything, we all know you kill a kitten. So don't kill kittens by dividing by 0. But anyhow, -2 is at -1/2. -1 is at -1. 0 is undefined. At 1 it's 1. And at 2 it's 1/2. So over here at our graph, and 2, and this would be -2. Alright, so when x is -2, y would equal 1/2. -1/2, that is. So it would be right there. Then at -1, it would be -1. 0 is undefined, so that means there's a vertical asymptote right here that it would not touch. Then on the positive side, you would have a point at 1, 1, 1, and another point at 2. Then when x is 2, y would be 1/2. So it would be right there. So let's look at the 3 values. So when x is -3, which would be out here, it is it's a -1/3. So it would be even closer to the x-axis, but it will never touch the x-axis because there's also a horizontal asymptote. And same way with 3 on the x-axis over here, it will be at 1/3. So knowing that there are 2 asymptotes, a vertical and a horizontal, our graph would look something like this. It would never touch the x-axis or the y-axis. but it would get forever close to it. And to check my work, we'll graph it on the calculator. And as you can see, it gets as close as possible to the axis, the X and Y, but it never touches. And that's all the graphs we have to review tonight.